It was supposed to be just another peaceful Saturday morning in Sunnyside Estates, a quiet suburban community where everyone knew the rules and followed them, or so I thought. Little did I know that my life was about to change forever when Karen Whitfield, the HOA president, decided she didn't care for federal laws or service dogs like mine. Welcome to my channel. Please subscribe if you want more Karen and HOA stories. Maverick, my loyal golden retriever, wasn't just a pet. He was my lifeline. After serving overseas in the military, Maverick helped me manage my PTSD episodes. He was more than a companion. He was my protector. But none of that mattered to Karen. To her, Maverick was nothing but a rule breaker. And then it happened. One moment we were sitting peacefully on my porch, enjoying the crisp morning air. The next, Karen stood before us, armed with a spray bottle and a scowl deeper than the Grand Canyon. Before I could react, she aimed straight at Maverick's face and sprayed him directly with some concoction of vinegar and water. My heart stopped as Maverick yelped in pain, pawing at his eyes. This wasn't just an attack on my dog. It was an attack on me, my rights, and everything I believed in. That day marked the beginning of a battle I never asked for, but one I would fight tooth and nail. After that fateful morning when Karen sprayed Maverick, I thought things couldn't get worse. But as it turned out, Karen wasn't done with me, not by a long shot. Over the next few weeks, she went on a rampage of nitpicking every little thing about my property. It was like she had nothing better to do than make my life miserable. First came the notices about my grass being a quarter-inch too tall. Then there were complaints about my mailbox. It's not the exact shade of black specified in the HOA guidelines. And let's not forget the garbage can issue. Apparently, leaving it visible from the street for even 45 minutes after collection violated some obscure rule no one had ever heard of before. Each notice bore Karen's signature, complete with her smug, smiley face that felt less friendly and more menacing each time I saw it. I tried to stay calm. I figured if I complied with everything, maybe she'd leave me alone. So, I trimmed the grass obsessively, repainted my mailbox twice, and hid my garbage can behind a bush until collection day. But deep down, I knew this wasn't over. These petty infractions were just the beginning. Then came the HOA meeting where Karen dropped her biggest bombshell yet. She proposed a new rule requiring all animals, including service animals, to register with the board and wear special HOA-approved identification tags. When I raised my hand to explain that this conflicted with federal law under the Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA, she cut me off mid-sentence. Federal laws don't override community standards, she snapped, glaring at me like I was personally attacking her. Several neighbors looked uncomfortable but stayed silent. No one dared to speak up against Karen. They were too scared of crossing her. After the meeting, Karen cornered me outside and whispered menacingly, "If you want to be difficult, I can be difficult too." Her breath smelled strongly of coffee and something sour, probably resentment. That night, I lay awake wondering what she might do next. Little did I know, her next move would shock the entire neighborhood. The following weekend, I was enjoying a peaceful morning on my front porch with Maverick resting peacefully beside me. We were reading the newspaper together, a rare moment of tranquility in those turbulent days. Suddenly, a shadow fell across us. There stood Karen, dressed in her usual khaki shorts and polo shirt, holding a spray bottle. "Your dog is violating the new pet ordinance by not having proper HOA identification," she announced loudly enough for half the block to hear. My blood boiled, but I kept my cool. "Maverick is a service dog protected by federal law," I reminded her firmly. "And that rule hasn't even been officially implemented yet." Her face flushed red with anger. "I'm tired of you military types thinking you're above the rules," she spat, advancing toward my yard. Before I could react, she aimed the spray bottle directly at Maverick and let loose. The vinegar and water solution hit him square in the face. He yelped in pain, backing away and pawing frantically at his eyes. I leapt to my feet, moving swiftly between Karen and Maverick. "What the hell is wrong with you?" I demanded, voice shaking with rage. "Do you have any idea what you've just done?" Karen smirked, unfazed. "Just a little vinegar and water. Won't hurt him, But maybe now he'll learn to respect authority. Respect authority? This woman clearly had no idea what real authority meant. By the time I managed to calm Maverick down and rinse his eyes thoroughly, I realized two things. First, this wasn't just an attack on my dog. It was an attack on my rights as a disabled veteran. Second, Karen needed to pay for what she'd done. Big time. So, I picked up my phone and dialed 911. After Karen was arrested, the neighborhood buzzed with whispers and murmurs. Some residents whispered words of support for me, while others remained silent, clearly still intimidated by Karen's lingering shadow. But one thing became clear. Karen's reign of terror wasn't over just yet. The following Monday morning, I received an anonymous letter slipped under my door. It read, "You think you won? This is only the beginning." My stomach churned as I crumpled the note and tossed it into the trash. Was this a threat from Karen or someone else who shared her views? Either way, it sent a chill down my spine. That same day, strange things started happening around my house. My mailbox was dented. My garden hose mysteriously disappeared, and graffiti appeared on my garage door reading, "No dogs allowed." At first, I thought it might have been kids playing pranks, but deep down, I knew better. These weren't random acts, they were messages meant to intimidate me. Determined not to let fear control me, I decided to gather evidence. I installed security cameras around my property, hoping to catch whoever was behind these attacks. Meanwhile, Maverick continued to act as my protector, always alert and ready to defend us if needed. One evening, while reviewing the footage, I noticed something peculiar. Around midnight, a figure dressed in black crept onto my lawn, carrying what looked like spray paint. The camera caught just enough of their face to confirm it wasn't Karen. It was Sarah Jenkins, another HOA board member known for being Karen's biggest supporter. Shock rippled through me. Why would Sarah do this? I called the police immediately, providing them with the video evidence. Officer Martinez, who had handled the initial incident involving Karen, promised to investigate further. Within hours, Sarah was brought in for questioning. She admitted to vandalizing my property but claimed she acted out of loyalty to Karen. "She's done so much for the community," Sarah sobbed during her confession. "I didn't want her to lose everything because of some dog." Her words shocked me, not because of her blind allegiance to Karen, but because they revealed how deeply entrenched Karen's influence was within the HOA. Even after her arrest, people were willing to break the law to protect her reputation. But that wasn't the only twist waiting for me. Later that week, I discovered that Karen had hired a high-priced lawyer to fight the charges against her. Her attorney argued that spraying Maverick wasn't intentional harm. It was simply an attempt to enforce HOA rules. They also claimed that federal laws protecting service animals didn't apply in private communities like Sunnyside Estates. This revelation hit me hard. If Karen's lawyer succeeded, it could set a dangerous precedent for other HOAs across the country. Determined to prevent this, I reached out to disability rights organizations and media outlets to share my story. Within days, news of the case spread nationwide, sparking outrage and support from strangers all over the country. What happened next took everyone by surprise. During a live interview on a national talk show, Karen herself appeared, defending her actions and accusing me of exaggerating the situation. "It was just a little vinegar water," she insisted, trying to play it off as harmless. But when shown footage of Maverick yelping in pain, public opinion turned sharply against her. Social media erupted with hashtags like #ProtectServiceDogs and #KarenGotJailed4a reason. As the legal battle heated up, I realized this wasn't just about me anymore. It was about standing up for the rights of disabled individuals everywhere. And no matter how many twists and turns lay ahead, I was prepared to see this through to the end. As Karen's trial drew closer, I expected the neighborhood to settle into a quieter rhythm. But instead, strange things began happening again. This time, though, it wasn't just vandalism or intimidation, it was something far more puzzling. One morning, as Maverick and I took our usual walk along the Sunnyside Estates trail, we encountered Mr. Thompson, an elderly man who lived at the end of the street. He rarely left his house, so seeing him out and about was unusual. What was even stranger was that he approached me with a curious expression. "I couldn't help but overhear your story," he said softly, leaning on his cane. You're not alone in this fight, son. Before I could respond, he handed me a folded piece of paper. Inside was a handwritten note detailing a shocking revelation. Karen had been secretly conspiring with other HOA members to sell off parts of the community land for profit. They planned to use the funds to hire expensive lawyers to defend themselves against lawsuits like mine. My jaw dropped. How do you know all this? I asked, stunned. Mr. Thompson smiled wistfully. Let's just say I've been around here longer than most people think. And I have connections. He disappeared down the trail before I could ask anything else. That night, I sat at my kitchen table staring at the note, wondering if what Mr. Thompson claimed was true. Could Karen's actions extend beyond mere pettiness? Was there a bigger conspiracy brewing? Determined to uncover the truth, I decided to dig deeper. Using the contacts I'd made during my military service, I hired a private investigator to look into the HOA's finances. Within days, the investigator returned with damning evidence. Over the past year, hundreds of thousands of dollars had vanished from the HOA's accounts, funneled into offshore accounts linked to Karen and her closest allies. But the twist didn't stop there. As I prepared to take this information to the authorities, another unexpected ally emerged. Karen's own daughter, Emily Whitfield. She showed up unannounced one evening, looking nervous but determined. Mom told me everything, she admitted, sitting across from me at the dining table. She thinks she can spin this whole thing to make herself look like the victim. But I know better. She's ruined lives, including mine. Emily revealed that she had secretly recorded several conversations between Karen and other board members discussing their illegal schemes. She handed me a USB drive containing audio files that would prove invaluable in court. With newfound confidence, I presented the evidence to the prosecutor handling Karen's case. The prosecution team was thrilled, adding these new charges to the list against Karen. However, they warned me that Karen's lawyer might try to discredit me by portraying me as someone seeking revenge rather than justice. And sure enough, during the trial, Karen's attorney launched a vicious counterattack. He painted me as a disgruntled resident using federal laws as a weapon to harass the HOA. Witnesses were called to testify about how difficult I supposedly was. Some neighbors, still intimidated by Karen's influence, even lied under oath. But then came the biggest twist of all. On the final day of the trial, none other than Judge Elizabeth Carter presided over the courtroom. To everyone's surprise, she turned out to be an old friend of my father's, a retired Navy officer who had served alongside him decades ago. Judge Carter listened intently to both sides, her piercing gaze never wavering. When the defense rested its case, she addressed Karen directly. Miss Whitfield, she said firmly, your actions weren't just about enforcing rules. They were about exploiting power. You crossed a line when you violated federal law and endangered a service animal. And now you face the consequences. The verdict came swiftly. Karen was sentenced to 6 months in jail, fined $10,000, and ordered to repay every penny stolen from the HOA's accounts. Additionally, she was banned from holding any leadership positions in homeowners associations nationwide. As Karen was led away in handcuffs, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. But the journey wasn't over yet, not by a long shot. With Karen behind bars and her influence shattered, the HOA was left in disarray. Without a strong leader, chaos reigned supreme. Garbage cans appeared on lawns overnight, mailboxes turned every color of the rainbow, and grass grew taller than ever before. For once, though, no one seemed to mind, not even me. But then came an unexpected twist. At the emergency HOA meeting where Karen had been ousted, a quiet voice spoke up from the back of the room. It belonged to Mrs. Peterson, a retired teacher who rarely attended these gatherings. If no one else is willing, she said softly but firmly, I'll take over as president. The room fell silent. No one had ever considered Mrs. Peterson for the role. She wasn't loud or flashy like Karen, but something about her calm demeanor made people listen. After some discussion, the vote went through unanimously. Mrs. Peterson became the new HOA president. Her first act? Tearing up the rulebook. Literally. At the next meeting, she arrived carrying Karen's old clipboard, and a pair of scissors. With a smile, she cut the thick stack of rules into tiny pieces, letting them flutter to the floor like confetti. "We've all lived under too many unnecessary restrictions," she explained. "From now on, let's focus on what truly matters: maintaining safety, respect, and community spirit." Under Mrs. Peterson's leadership, Sunnyside Estates began to transform. The harsh fines disappeared, replaced by friendly reminders. Neighbors started talking to each other again without fear of judgment. And best of all, Maverick and I were finally welcomed as valued members of the community. However, not everyone was happy with the changes. A small group of residents, led by Sarah Jenkins, Karen's former ally, began whispering about how things weren't being run properly anymore. They claimed that without strict rules, the neighborhood would fall apart. One evening, they held a secret meeting in Sarah's garage, plotting ways to undermine Mrs. Peterson's authority. Meanwhile, I received another anonymous note slipped under my door. "Don't think this is over. We're watching you." My stomach tightened, but I refused to let fear control me. Instead, I decided to turn the tables. Using the evidence I'd gathered during Karen's reign, I exposed Sarah and her followers' plans to the entire community. During the next HOA meeting, I stood up and presented recordings of their conversations, proving they were trying to sabotage Mrs. Peterson's efforts. The room erupted in outrage. Even those who had once supported Karen couldn't believe such betrayal. By the end of the meeting, Sarah and her allies resigned from the board voluntarily. The community rallied around Mrs. Peterson, vowing to protect the positive changes she had brought about. But just when I thought the drama was over, a surprising visitor showed up at my doorstep one evening. It was Judge Elizabeth Carter, the same judge who had sentenced Karen. She introduced herself as a long-lost family friend and offered to mentor me in navigating legal challenges related to service animals. "I've seen firsthand how important your fight is," she said warmly, "and I want to help ensure that others don't face the same battles you did." Her offer gave me hope, not just for myself, but for anyone who relied on service animals for support. Together, we began drafting proposals to strengthen federal protections for disabled individuals nationwide. As the weeks passed, life in Sunnyside Estates improved dramatically. The tension dissolved, replaced by genuine camaraderie. And Maverick? He continued to thrive, his presence now celebrated rather than questioned. Yet, deep down, I knew one thing. Sometimes standing up for what's right comes with a price. But if everyone stayed vigilant, communities like ours could become places where kindness triumphed over cruelty, and where everyone felt safe and respected. As Karen awaited her trial, I thought the worst was over. But life has a way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them. One morning, while Maverick and I were out for our usual walk, I noticed a familiar figure watching us from across the street. It was Sarah Jenkins, the same woman who had vandalized my property. She approached cautiously, her hands trembling as she clutched a folded piece of paper. "I need to tell you something," she said nervously. "Karen isn't the only one involved in this." My heart skipped a beat. What could she possibly mean? Before I could ask, she handed me the paper. Inside was a list of names, HOA members who had secretly agreed to support Karen during the trial, no matter what evidence came to light. Some of these people were neighbors I'd trusted, friends I'd shared barbecues with. Betrayal stung like a slap in the face. That evening, I couldn't sleep. My mind raced with questions. How far would they go to protect Karen? And why did they feel so strongly about her leadership? The next day, things took another unexpected turn. During Karen's trial, one of the key witnesses, a neighbor named Mr. Thompson, suddenly changed his story. He claimed that he hadn't seen Karen spray Maverick at all. Instead, he suggested it might have been an accident or even someone else entirely. The courtroom buzzed with whispers. Had Mr. Thompson been bribed? Threatened? Or was there some truth to his new version of events? Determined to uncover the truth, I decided to investigate further. With the help of Judge Elizabeth Carter, who had become both a mentor and a friend, I dug deeper into the HOA's financial records. What we found shocked everyone. Over the past year, Karen and her allies had embezzled thousands of dollars from the HOA budget, funneling the money into offshore accounts. But here's where it got really interesting. As it turned out, Mr. Thompson wasn't just any random neighbor, he was Karen's accountant. His sudden change of heart made sense now. He was trying to cover up their illegal activities by casting doubt on the case against Karen. Armed with this new evidence, I returned to court. This time, I presented not just proof of Karen's cruelty toward Maverick, but also documentation of her financial crimes. The judge listened intently, her expression growing darker with every detail revealed. When the verdict finally came down, it wasn't just Karen who faced consequences. Several other HOA members, including Sarah Jenkins and Mr. Thompson, were charged with conspiracy and fraud. The community erupted in outrage. People couldn't believe how deep the corruption ran. In the aftermath, Mrs. Peterson, the new HOA president, worked tirelessly to restore trust within the neighborhood. She organized community meetings, encouraged open communication, and introduced policies that prioritized fairness and transparency. Slowly but surely, Sunnyside Estates began to heal. Yet, despite the progress, I remained cautious. You never know when someone will try to bend the rules again. That's why I continue to advocate, not just for myself and Maverick, but for anyone who relies on service animals for support. Together, we're building a world where kindness triumphs over cruelty and where everyone feels safe and respected. After Karen's arrest, I thought the nightmare was over. But as it turned out, justice isn't always quick or easy. While Karen sat in jail awaiting trial, her supporters, especially Sarah Jenkins and a few other HOA members, began whispering campaigns against me. They claimed I had exaggerated the incident to get back at Karen for enforcing rules. Some even suggested that Maverick wasn't really a service dog at all. One evening, as I walked Maverick along the trail, I overheard two neighbors talking. "He just wants attention," one of them said. "Service dogs aren't supposed to act like pets." My blood boiled, but I reminded myself that staying calm was key. Instead of lashing out, I decided to educate the community about what service animals truly do. I organized an open house event where I invited everyone to meet Maverick and learn more about his role in my life. I showed videos of him performing tasks, fetching medication during panic attacks, waking me up from nightmares, and guiding me through crowded areas. By the end of the session, many neighbors apologized for doubting us. Even Sarah Jenkins looked slightly embarrassed when she left. But the real battle was still ahead, Karen's trial. As the date approached, tensions rose again. Her lawyer filed motion after motion, trying to delay proceedings. One day, I received a letter from the court stating that Karen's team planned to argue that federal laws didn't apply within private communities like Sunnyside Estates. If they succeeded, it could set a dangerous precedent nationwide. Determined not to let this happen, I reached out to disability rights organizations for support. To my surprise, they offered to send representatives to testify on my behalf. One advocate, Ms. Thompson, explained how similar cases had been won before by proving that federal protections override local regulations. With their help, I felt stronger than ever. The trial itself was intense. On the first day, Karen appeared in designer clothes, looking confident despite being in handcuffs. Her lawyer launched into a passionate defense, arguing that spraying Maverick with water was harmless and that I had misinterpreted the situation. Several neighbors were called to testify, some siding with Karen while others backed me up. Then came the twist no one saw coming. During cross-examination, I revealed evidence I had gathered during my investigation, the same evidence that proved Karen and her allies had embezzled funds from the HOA. Judge Carter, who presided over the case, listened intently as I presented documents showing illegal transactions totaling thousands of dollars. The courtroom fell silent as the prosecutor added these charges to the list against Karen. By the time closing arguments rolled around, the tide had clearly shifted in my favor. When the verdict was read, Karen was found guilty not only of interfering with a service animal but also of fraud and conspiracy. The judge sentenced her to 30 days in jail, a $5,000 fine, 200 hours of community service at an animal shelter, and mandatory education classes on disability rights. As Karen was led away, I noticed something remarkable. For the first time, her usual smirk was gone. replaced by a look of genuine regret. She mouthed something to me, but I couldn't hear it over the murmurs of the crowd. Did she finally understand the consequences of her actions? Back home, Maverick greeted me with his usual enthusiasm. Despite everything, he remained the same loyal companion who had helped me through so much. That night, I reflected on the journey we'd been through. It hadn't been easy, but standing up for what was right had made a difference. Not just for me, but for anyone relying on service animals across the country. Yet, I knew there would always be people like Karen, those who believed rules applied only to others. That's why advocacy mattered. Together, we could create a world where kindness and understanding triumphed over cruelty and entitlement. After Karen's sentencing, I thought the drama was finally over. But life has a way of surprising you when you least expect it. Just as Sunnyside Estates began to heal under Mrs. Peterson's leadership, another challenge emerged, one that would test the entire community. It started with a letter from the city council. They announced plans to rezone part of our neighborhood for commercial development. This meant tearing down several homes, including those belonging to some of our oldest residents. Naturally, the news sent shockwaves through the community. People gathered at Mrs. Peterson's house late into the night, brainstorming ways to stop the project. Mrs. Peterson suggested organizing a petition drive and reaching out to local media to raise awareness. Others proposed holding rallies or even filing lawsuits if necessary. For the first time since Karen's reign, the community came together, not out of fear, but out of genuine concern for one another. Maverick and I joined the effort too. We canvassed the neighborhood, knocking on doors and explaining the situation to anyone who would listen. To my surprise, many of the same neighbors who had once stayed silent during Karen's rule now stood up and spoke out. It was heartening to see how much things had changed. But then came an unexpected twist. During one of our meetings, Sarah Jenkins, the former Karen ally, raised her hand hesitantly. "I know I haven't always been on the right side of things," she admitted, looking ashamed. "But maybe this is my chance to make amends." No one said anything for a moment. Then Mrs. Peterson nodded kindly. "We all have opportunities to change, Sarah. Welcome aboard." Sarah ended up playing a crucial role in the campaign. Using her knowledge of HOA procedures, she helped us draft formal objections to the rezoning proposal. Together, we submitted mountains of paperwork, gathered hundreds of signatures, and even arranged a meeting with city officials. The fight wasn't easy. There were long nights filled with arguments, doubts, and setbacks. At one point, the city council seemed determined to push through the rezoning despite our protests. But we refused to give up. Inspired by Maverick's unwavering loyalty, I reminded myself that standing up for what's right sometimes means facing challenges head-on. Finally, after months of hard work, the city council voted to reject the rezoning plan. Cheers erupted throughout the neighborhood when the news broke. For the first time in years, Sunnyside Estates felt truly united, not divided by rules, entitlement, or greed. As the dust settled, I reflected on everything that had happened. From Karen's tyranny to the battle against rezoning, each experience taught me valuable lessons about resilience, compassion, and justice. Most importantly, I learned that no matter how difficult the road may seem, there's strength in standing together. One evening, as Maverick and I strolled along the familiar walking trail, I realized something profound. This journey wasn't just about protecting my rights or preserving my home. It was about creating a world where everyone, regardless of their background or abilities, can live with dignity and respect. And so, I offer this moral lesson to anyone reading my story. Respect others' rights, stand up for what's right, and never underestimate the power of unity. In doing so, you can turn even the darkest storms into moments of growth and triumph. With Maverick by my side, I knew we were ready for whatever lay ahead. After all, every challenge is just another opportunity to prove that kindness and determination can overcome anything, even the toughest HOA president.